"Don't go inside," the girl whispered. "They're going to hurt you." Franklin Mercer stopped walking. He looked down at the child crouching beside the hedgerow at the edge of his driveway. Small, maybe 9 years old, her knees dirty, her eyes wide and completely serious. She was the granddaughter of his housekeeper, Vera. He had seen her twice before, maybe 3 times, always quiet, always watching. He had never learned her name. "Excuse me?" he said. "Please, sir." She grabbed the sleeve of his jacket with both hands. "Don't go inside." Franklin was 63 years old. He had spent 4 decades as a corporate attorney, and in that time he had learned to read people, their hesitations, their tells, the small fractures in their composure that revealed what their words were trying to hide. He looked at this child. There was no performance in her face, no exaggeration. Just fear, clear and urgent, the way fear looks on someone who hasn't yet learned to disguise it. He crouched down so they were at eye level. "What's your name?" he said. "Penny, Penny." He kept his voice low, steady. "Tell me what you saw," she told him. Franklin Mercer had built his life in the kind of careful, methodical way that left very little room for surprises. He had grown up in Dayton, Ohio, the second son of a machinist and a school librarian, and he had understood early that the distance between where he was and where he wanted to be was entirely a matter of work. He worked. He studied. He earned a scholarship to Ohio State then, law school at Georgetown, then a junior position at a mid-sized firm in Columbus, where he billed more hours than anyone else in his cohort and never complained about it. By the time he was 40, he had made partner. By 50, he had his own firm, Mercer and Associates, 16 attorneys, offices in Columbus and Cincinnati. By 60, he had more money than he had ever imagined as a boy in a house in Dublin, Ohio that sat on 2.5 acres and had a greenhouse off the back where he grew tomatoes in February. He had also, somewhere in those decades, acquired a wife. Sylvia Mercer was 54 years old, elegant in the way that requires daily maintenance, and she had been maid to Franklin for 19 years. They had met at a charity gala. She was on the committee, he was a donor, and she had been charming and sharp and funny, and he had been lonely in the specific way that very busy men become lonely without noticing it. They married 2 years later. No children. She had not wanted any, and he had told himself he was fine with that, and for a long time he believed it. The marriage had been for most of its duration what Franklin privately categorized as functional. Not passionate, not particularly warm, but stable. She managed the house and the social calendar and the charitable appearances. He managed the firm and the money and the properties. They moved through their shared life like two people in the same office building, aware of each other, occasionally in the same room, fundamentally operating in separate orbits. He had not examined this too closely. He was not by nature an introspective man. He preferred problems he could solve. Vera had worked for them for 11 years. She came on Tuesdays and Fridays, kept the house in order, and occasionally brought her granddaughter, Penny, when school was out. Franklin had exchanged perhaps 40 words with the child total. She was a quiet, watchful girl with her grandmother's careful eyes, and she tended to find corners to sit in and read while Vera worked. That Tuesday in October, Franklin had left the office early. He had a headache starting behind his left eye, the kind that preceded a migraine if he didn't catch it, and he had told his assistant to reschedule his 3 o'clock. He drove home, parked in the circular drive, and was walking toward the front door when Penny stepped out of the hedgerow and grabbed his sleeve. "Don't go inside. They're going to hurt you." He crouched down. He listened. She had been in the small sitting room off the kitchen, she said, reading. The door was mostly closed. She heard voices. Her grandmother was in the kitchen, but the voices weren't coming from there. They were coming from the hallway, or maybe the study, muffled but audible. She had heard her name used by adults as a reason not to say things plenty of times, so she had learned to be still and quiet when conversations happened nearby. She recognized Mrs. Mercer's voice immediately. She did not recognize the man's voice. Mrs. Mercer had said, "He'll be home by 6. I've already moved the account." The man said something Penny couldn't fully hear. Then Mrs. Mercer said, "It needs to look like an accident. I've already told you what I can pay." Penny had not moved. She said she was afraid to breathe. The man said something else. Then footsteps moving away. A door opening and closing somewhere toward the back of the house. Penny had stayed where she was for a long time. Then she had gone to find her grandmother, but her grandmother was vacuuming upstairs and couldn't hear her. So Penny had gone outside to wait. She didn't know what else to do. She had been sitting behind the hedgerow for 40 minutes when Franklin's car pulled into the drive. Franklin listened to all of it. He did not interrupt. He did not tell her she had misunderstood, or that she was imagining things, or that adults sometimes talk about things that sound scarier than they are. He had heard enough testimony in his career to know that the most reliable witnesses are often the ones who are the most frightened, because fear sharpens detail. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Did you see the man?" he said. "Only a little. Through the door crack. He was tall, gray jacket. He had a tattoo here." She touched the side of her neck. "Did he see you?" "No, sir." "Good." Franklin stood. He looked at the house. All the windows he could see from the drive appeared normal. No movement, no shadows. "I need you to do something for me, Penny. I need you to go back through the side gate, go to the back garden, and wait by the greenhouse. Don't go inside the house." "Can you do that?" She nodded. "Stay low by the hedges along the fence. Don't let anyone see you from the windows." She nodded again and went, quiet and quick, the way a child who has spent time around cautious adults learns to move. Franklin walked to his car as he sat in the driver's seat and did not go inside. He called his office. He asked his paralegal, a methodical young man named Stewart, to pull up any recent activity on the joint accounts, all of them. He said it was urgent. He said not to ask questions yet, just look and call him back within 20 minutes. Stewart called back in 14. The joint investment account, the one tied to the brokerage they had opened together 12 years ago, the one Franklin rarely looked at because Sylvia had always handled the household finances, had been drawn down significantly over the preceding 6 weeks. Not emptied, but reduced in a way that would not have triggered any automated alert because it had been done in increments just below the thresholds Franklin had set years ago and forgotten about. The total moved, a little over $300,000. Franklin sat with that number for a while. He thought about what a man with a tattoo on his neck and a gray jacket would charge for what Sylvia had described. He thought about how $300,000 was enough to motivate almost anyone for almost anything. He thought about the life insurance policy he had updated 2 years ago, at Sylvia's suggestion, which named her as the sole beneficiary. The policy was for $2 million. He got out of the car. He did not go to the front door. He went around the side of the house, through the gate the way Penny had gone, and found her crouched behind a stone planter near the greenhouse. Her book still in her hand, her face pale and composed. "You did well," he told her. He called his brother instead of the police. This was a calculation. Franklin's brother Dale was a retired detective who had spent 22 years with the Columbus PD before his knees gave out, and Franklin trusted him with a specific kind of problem. The kind where moving too fast could destroy evidence, and where the person you were dealing with was smart enough to have thought about what they could deny. Sylvia was smart. Franklin had always known that. He had admired it for years, now he was thinking about it differently. Dale answered on the second ring. Franklin said, "I need your help. I need you to be quiet about it until I tell you otherwise," Dale said. "Tell me," Franklin told him. There was a pause. Then Dale said, "Don't confront her. Don't change anything in the house. Act normal when you go in." "I know," Franklin said. "Do you have a friend in the DA's office, too?" Franklin said. "Call one of them tonight, after dinner, whatever dinner looks like." Another pause. "You okay?" Franklin thought about it honestly. "I don't know yet," he said. "That's fair," Dale said. "Go eat dinner with your wife." Franklin went inside. He changed out of his jacket. He took something for the headache. He found Sylvia in the kitchen pouring herself a glass of wine, and he said he had come home early because of the migraine. And she said she was sorry to hear that, and she handed him a glass of water without being asked, and the gesture was so practiced and so automatic that he had to look away for a moment. He did not look at her the way he was feeling. He had cross-examined people for 40 years. He could manage his face. Dinner was pasta she had made from a recipe she'd been using since their 3rd year of marriage. They ate at the kitchen table rather than the dining room, because Franklin had always preferred it, and she had learned not to argue about it. She talked about the charity gala coming up in November, about whether they should redecorate the guest room, about a podcast she had started listening to on her morning walks. He responded. He asked follow-up questions. He passed her the bread. At no point during dinner did she look like a woman who had arranged for her husband to be killed. That was the part that stayed with him afterward, not the money, not the man with the tattoo, not even the policy. It was that she looked exactly the same. The same composed face, the same careful small talk, the same way she tilted her head slightly when she was listening. 19 years of dinners. And she had looked exactly like this at all of them. After dinner, he said he was going to his study to work. She said she understood. He called his contact in the DA's office from the landline because his cell phone was on his desk, and he did not want to touch it unnecessarily. He spoke quietly and precisely, the way he spoke in depositions, and he laid out what Penny had heard and what Stewart had found, and when he was finished, there was a silence on the other end of the line. Then his contact said, "Do you want to do this the formal way or the quiet way first?" "The quiet way," Franklin said. "I want to know who the man is before anything moves. Give me the tattoo description and what the girl heard. I'll make some calls." Franklin gave him everything. He did not sleep much that night. He lay in the dark beside Sylvia, who slept deeply and without apparent difficulty, and he stared at the ceiling and thought about the greenhouse and some tomatoes he had planted in September that were just starting to come up, and about his brother's voice on the phone, steady and practical, and about a 9-year-old girl crouching behind a planter with a book in her hand, deciding to do something brave. He thought, what did she see in me that made her think I was worth warning? He thought, whatever it was, I hope I can be that thing. By Thursday morning, Dale had driven up from Lancaster. He sat in Franklin's office at the firm, not the house. Franklin had decided early that the house was compromised and he would not discuss any of this there, and spread out what his contact in the DA's office had already put together. The man with the tattoo was named Victor Cobb, 41 years old. 2 prior arrests, 1 conviction, served 14 months on an assault charge in 2019. He had a history of association with people who provided what were sometimes called private security services, which was a phrase that covered a number of things depending on the client. He had been paid through a shell account that traced back to a business Sylvia had registered in her maiden name in 2021, a first installment of $60,000. The second installment, contingent on completion, was $240,000. She's been planning this for a while, Dale said. He said it without particular emotion, the way he had always processed difficult information, by laying it flat on the table and looking at it directly. At least 2 years, Franklin said. The business registration. What do you want to do? I want her stopped, Franklin said, and I want it done correctly. I don't want anything thrown out because we moved too fast. Dale nodded. Then we wait for the DA to build it. You keep acting normal. I can do that. I know you can. Dale was quiet for a moment. Franklin, I'm sorry. Yeah, Franklin said. He went back to work. He reviewed contracts. He attended a meeting about a merger. He ate lunch at his desk. He called Vera and told her, carefully, that her granddaughter had done something important and that he was grateful, and that there was nothing for Vera to worry about, but that it would be good if Penny didn't come to the house for the next few weeks. Vera asked if everything was all right. Franklin said it would be. The arrest came 8 days later. Franklin was at the office when his contact called. Victor Cobb had been picked up at a motel off I-70 in possession of a weapon and documentation that confirmed the engagement. Sylvia was taken into custody the same afternoon from the parking lot of a dry cleaner on Henderson Road, which Franklin had always thought was a strange place for a life to change, but that was where it happened. He did not go home that night. He went to Dale's hotel instead, and they ate takeout in the room and watched a game. Franklin couldn't afterward remember. And at some point, Dale said, "You know what I keep thinking about?" "What?" Franklin said. "That little girl. 40 minutes. She sat outside that house for 40 minutes, scared out of her mind, waiting." Franklin nodded. "Lot of adults wouldn't have done that," Dale said. "Lot of adults would have talked themselves out of it." "I know. You should tell her that she did something." Franklin had been thinking about how to do exactly that. He spoke to Vera the next morning. He asked if he could speak to Penny directly, with Vera present. Vera said yes, and brought her over that Saturday. Not to the house, but to a coffee shop on High Street that Vera liked, neutral ground, somewhere that didn't carry any weight. Penny sat across from him in a booth, a hot chocolate in front of her, still wearing that same watchful expression she always had. She looked, if anything, slightly less frightened than she had crouching beside the hedgerow. "I want to tell you something," Franklin said. "What you did was one of the bravest things I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of things in a long time." Penny looked at him seriously. "Is Mrs. Mercer going to go to jail?" "Yes," he said. "She is." Penny considered this. "Are you okay?" The question surprised him enough that he had to take a second before answering. Not because it was complicated, but because it was asked with such directness, the way children ask things when they actually want to know. "I'm getting there," he said. "Honestly." She nodded like that was a satisfactory answer. She drank her hot chocolate. Vera put a hand on her granddaughter's shoulder, and Penny leaned into it slightly, and the 3 of them sat in the booth while the Saturday morning moved around them outside the window. Franklin paid for their drinks. He shook Vera's hand. He told her she had raised someone remarkable. Vera said, "She's always been too sharp for her own good." "No," Franklin said, "she's exactly sharp enough." The months that followed were what they were. There were lawyers, his own colleagues, which had its own particular strangeness, and there were hearings, and there was the slow machinery of consequence grinding through its proper stages. Sylvia maintained, in the beginning, that Penny had misunderstood, that the conversation had been taken out of context, that the financial transfers had been for purposes she could account for. The evidence did not support any of this, and her attorney was good, but not good enough. and by February a plea agreement had been reached that would take her off the board for a considerable number of years. Franklin sold the house in Dublin. He had not liked it as much as he had told himself. He bought a smaller place near Worthington, no greenhouse, which was fine. He had already bought a membership at a community garden 2 miles away where he could grow what he wanted without the upkeep. He worked fewer hours. He had lunch with Dale once a month, which they had not done in years. He found to his mild surprise that the life that emerged from the wreckage was in some respects quieter and more honest than the one it replaced. He thought about Penny sometimes. He had set up an education account in her name, which Vera had accepted with the specific combination of dignity and practicality that characterized everything Vera did. He did not make a production of it. It was not a dramatic gesture. It was just a thing he was able to do that seemed like the right shape for what she had given him. The thing she had given him was harder to name. It was not just his life, though it was that. It was something about what she had been willing to risk, at 9 years old, with no certainty that he would believe her, with every reason to stay quiet and pretend she hadn't heard, and what that said about the kind of person she already was and was going to become. He had been a corporate attorney for 4 decades. He had met a great many people who were careful about their own interests and very little else. He had met a smaller number of people who were willing to do the harder thing when it would have been simpler not to. Penny was already at 9, firmly in the second category. He hoped she always would be. The last time he saw her, she was coming out of a library in Worthington on a Saturday afternoon, a stack of books tucked under one arm, the same unhurried, observant expression she had always worn. She spotted him on the sidewalk and stopped. "Mr. Mercer," she said. "Penny." He nodded at the books. "Good ones?" She looked at them critically. "2 good ones. One I'm not sure about yet." "Fair enough," he said. They stood on the sidewalk in the October light, 2 people who had each seen the other clearly at a moment that mattered, and there was nothing further that needed to be said about it. She went her way. He went his. Some things don't need a larger ending than that. Some things are exactly the right size already.